And we are back with another episode of Beyond the Track. Thanks for tuning in. Sometimes we have people on where there's, just a story, just a background, want to get to know them better. Then sometimes we have people on that are making dramatic changes in their life, and it actually affects all of us. And that's why we have Steve Giberson on the show. Steve, instead of starting with from the beginning with you, we got to talk about right now. So just bring us up to speed because, big change.
Yeah, it's 18 years of all the nationals, all the Supercross races. Man, it's a lot. I've described it as being like the healthiest 450 rider ever. Maybe missed one or two races during an 18-year span. So it's a lot of flights, a lot of hotels, a lot of rental cars, and I don't know, during COVID times and maybe a little advancing age, I decided maybe it's time to step it back a little bit and hand it off to somebody else that with a little more youth, energy, and all that.
So is it that you finally got enough sky miles and points? You're like, I finally got the number I was chasing, so now I'm done. Now that I have like 50 million points, is that what it was?
No, actually, I kind of hurt myself a little bit during that whole thing because like the last 10 years of the nationals, other than this year, I would take my travel trailer and drive around the country. So I probably should have been accumulating miles in the summertime too. I was skipping it and just doing the trailer deal.
So missed out on the mileage anyway. But yeah. Okay, so what is the change then? We all know you from Vital MX. You've been on the floor of the stadiums, as long as I can remember, but what are you going to do now? Like, what is this big change?
As far as my future, I'll tell you when I figure it out.
We don't know.
I really don't know.
Explore.
Yeah.
Explore. What are we thinking?
I think this is a video resume right now, so people can check out the history and everything else.
And this isn't Beyond the Track now. This is an interview. And then we'll just forward it to wherever you want to go. We'll just forward it over.
Yep.
Okay. Well, you better bring your A game then.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So let's start from the beginning though, because you have a long career, been around for a long time, seen some of the greatest moments in Supercross from a unique perspective. But take me back to the beginning of where this but this whole thing in the world of Supercross and motocross began for you.
If you want to go way back, my mom was an RN in an emergency room. And so she saw every motorcycle guy that came in hurt, tweaked, busted up, probably the majority of it being street bikes. But she was having none of it for me being on a motorcycle. So I got into BMX. That was kind of next best option for me. Followed along. I raced, got up to where I was winning nationals at a B Pro level. And but I kept falling, breaking my collarbone. At the same time, I guess I was proving her right a little bit. So, about the time I got to the 6th or 7th collarbone, I decided maybe it's time to find something else to do. That was, but I was already working at BMX Action Magazine. I was originally hired there to do the film processing back in the days when it was still film and, the black and white darkroom upstairs in the office. I was doing all the photo printing. Later became, the publisher. Along the way, he was teaching me a little bit of everything: writing, photography, how to lay it out, concepts on stories and articles and complete issues. And so I think, I kind of got a college level education in just practical, side of doing the magazine business. So at one point I became the editor over there, again, with help from the publisher, Bob Osborne. And that's kind of what set me off on magazines and, the whole publishing side of where I'm at.
Was there an interest in that young at all, or did that develop? Because some people will land in a position that they didn't expect and they're like, oh my gosh, I love this. And then some love it first and then go and seek it. So for you, was there an interest prior to getting started in all the photography, the journalism, the writing? Was there anything before that, or did you land there?
It's funny, like back in the day, I used to scour all the motorcycle magazines. And back then, it was Popular Cycling, Dirt Bike, Motocross Action. You just scour those things, cut out the pictures, stick them on the wall. And it's funny because back in those days, they had very limited color photos in every issue, where now it's pretty much standard to run almost all color, if not all color. And, there was a huge interest there, but I guess, looking at the pictures, reading the articles, I guess I was picking up on that whole side of it even back pretty early on. It was definitely more limited. I mean, now you want to go YouTube route, you want to go Instagram, the instant Instagram stuff, just blitz through a whole ton of stuff. Do you want to go to forums? Do you want to go to websites? There's no shortage of information out there. So back then, I mean, the magazine stuff really was kind of the Bible for anybody that was interested in any kind of specialty sport or interest like that.
I remember, and I know this is going to be just kind of, I'll inject this in the conversation, but I remember being, I would think, in my late teenage years, and I still would go to like the grocery store and go to the magazine aisle and just look for Motocross Action, Racer X, Trans. I would just go and look at them all, and I'd stand there and probably read pieces of it while in the store, just kind of like hanging out, passing time. And it's crazy how the world has gotten so different now, to where you just wake up, press a button on your phone, and you have everything that you could ever have. Where back then it was like, yeah, you would stand at the grocery store and read, and maybe if this one looked good enough, you'd take it to the counter and you'd check it out. But that's, I mean, God, I remember that vividly.
I used to call the newsstands the library, because I'd go down to the library for an hour or so and just sit there and read all the magazines until they'd chase you out.
Yeah,
but,
if it's depending on how much time you had in the day, you could get through a magazine or two standing there. But in those beginning days when this is all kind of happening for you, was there like a defining moment that you can remember that really, I guess, cemented your interest and your path towards where you are now? Because again, doing a little bit here and you don't really know exactly where the path's going to lead you, but was there something where you're like, okay, this is my road, this is where I'm going?
Yeah, definitely moving into that editor spot over at BMX Action. I mean, that was, I learned so much over there. And for me, it was a way to stay involved with the sports that I love. And you still get some of the adrenaline buzz out of it without putting my body on the line every weekend. To have an 18-year career as a pro racer, those are slim and few. The 18 years is also just what I spent on motocross and supercross. There's add another 20 for BMX and mountain bikes. So I've been doing this a long time.
When did that, I mean, again, you had the BMX background, that's what started it, but how did the bridge into supercross, motocross happen? Again, was that something that happened organically? Did you pursue it? I mean, I just take me through that turn, I guess, into from BMX to moto.
Well, as I was learning, I got a good tax return one year, so I went out and bought a camera. And this is, again, it's still while I was sort of learning on the BMX side of it. But I'd go to the local nationals here, Saddleback, back in the day. And bang off a few rolls of photos. It's nice now with digital, where you have almost an unlimited film and processing budget. You could just go nutso on any given weekend. Back then, it was like there was a dollar commitment to every time you're clicking the shutter. It'd be about $20 for 36 shots on a roll of film, between film and processing. So you either figured it out or you didn't. But I went to that national at Saddleback, brought a few rolls of film, there was this really cool green background, springtime, so the hills are super green out there. Had a photo of Mark Barnett that I shot and, just randomly sent to Motocross Action. And it's funny, talking about the newsstand thing, a couple months later, I go in the newsstand, I'm flipping through the issue, and that's my photo. There was a full page shot of Barnett in there, which was really cool. I wasn't expecting it at all. But yeah, I think I don't remember if it was 10 or $20 for the photo.
I I was gonna say, you see the photo. Is it like, did the check come in the next week, or did you have to go get it? Like, hey guys,
yeah,
I
I think
sent you that.
I think I had to nudge him a little bit, and yeah, it's pretty funny. So
I love
and then
that. Random question. You say 36 to a roll. When you would go and hammer the 36 and you'd go back, what percentage of those, just curious, out of curiosity, what percentage of those do you think were usable at a high level in a magazine or whatever? Because I can't imagine they're all you know what I mean? Like how many out of the 36 are like, ooh, that could be used?
Definitely not all 36, that's for sure. You know, if you get a handful of nuggets out of a 36 shot roll, you know, and this is as I'm learning, it probably got a little better later on, but especially back in the day with slide film, if you missed it by maybe a third of a stop, you know, you'd stare at it lovingly, and you can't make the exposure better, and you couldn't make it any sharper, and you just pitch it in the trash. And back then, you know, everything was original, so there was one of any shot. It's not like digital files where you can just fling them in every direction. So
I was gonna say, what's it like now, where you just let it fly all night long?
Well, I mean, the modern cameras now, I actually tune down the shutter, you know, the shutter, or the amount of shots or the speed that it'll shoot. You end up with too many. I mean, you'll just fill up hard drives and everything else. So
and I would imagine you'd end up wasting a lot of your own time later going through, right? When you're just like, God, I have probably double of what I need.
Yeah, you know, it's a lot to look at later on. Back in the day with slides, you would, you know, you're holding the slide plus a little plastic magnifier loop, and you know, every shot you're doing this with. And I used to wear a ring in the lenses on my glasses. You know, you could tell where the loop would hit the lenses. It's pretty funny.
So motocross action, the Barnett photo gets in there, you get your check for 10, 20 bucks, whatever. Was that where the turn happened though, to where your interest grew more and you did you want to make moves that way? Or again, like how did you get over to this side more on the full-time basis?
Yeah, I mean, the interest was always there, you know, at least on the spectator and fan and viewer level. How I ended up kind of on this side is, I mean, I did magazines, the BMX and mountain bike stuff for years. I worked for Specialized for quite a while. You know, I would follow along and shoot all their team riders out in mountain bike stuff. I did some mountain bike magazine stuff also. But when I moved back, you know, and then I was living up in Morgan Hill, so more Central California. Yep. My wife at the time got a transfer back to Southern California. She was working for Sony, and then you know, I'm okay, back to Southern California, back to kind of the nerve center. You know, I did freelance stuff for a little bit, and then I started Moto Drive as just kind of a place to, or you know, as a website as a place just to show off photos and everything else. Then started up with the message board, and then that's what later, you know, got rolled into Vital MX as the forum there. And you know, so at one point Don Maeda was looking for a web editor, and I applied with him, and it's actually kind of a funny story. My job interview there did not go well. He says, yeah, come on out, let's go riding at Elsinore. So I said, yeah, okay. It had been, at that point, it had been a couple of years since I'd been on a bike, and you know, I was doing lots of cycling and all that, but not moto stuff. He says, hey, okay, we'll fix you up with some boots and gear, and you know, you can come out and go riding with us. So I went out and did one moto, and then I remember kicking over the bike for the second moto, and there's nothing after that. I don't remember.
No.
I don't remember riding. I don't remember the crash. I don't remember the ambulance ride.
And this is somewhat of a job interview. This is part of like an interview-ish.
Yeah.
So you got knocked out on an interview.
Oh, KO'd, fractured pelvis.
Dude, I beat.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like, that doesn't, I mean, that, what, 1 in a billion shot to get knocked out on a job interview?
Oh yeah. Well, fractured pelvis, concussion.
Oh my gosh.
And strangely, I didn't hear from Don for a while after that.
Yeah, so you didn't get the job? That should have been automatic.
No, it was pretty funny because Big E Eric Bartolus that works over at Yosh now was, I think he ended up
Yep.
getting that job. And then a few months later, they were shuffling around spots over there, and I got a call back from Don, and hey, we want to talk to you again, but you don't have to go riding this time. So it was actually pretty funny.
I saw Don this weekend. I didn't talk to him, but I was down south this past weekend and saw him. He's still out there doing his motos, man. He's committed to it.
Yep.
So it was good to see him. I didn't have a chance to talk to him because I was dealing with my kid. Anyways, all right. So is that where you get a job with? And who was that with? Motocross Action at that time? No.
Transworld.
With
Yep.
Transworld. Okay, so you end up getting that gig, or was it a different position that you ended up getting?
Biggie had been the web editor for a while. They moved him over. I think it was associate editor, and then I moved into the web editor spot. And this was back kind of early days where, I'd tell Don, "Hey, Don, did you know we can do video on the site?" There was none of that happening. Yeah. So, and the Transworld site was kind of funny because it was actually a little bit like, you're wondering if you're doing a moto site or if you're launching nuclear missiles. We used to have these fobs where it had a code that changed every minute, and when you're logging in, you had to punch in that code. If you missed, if you're at like 55 seconds or later, you're rushing trying to get it in there. It was pretty funny.
That's cool. And what year is this?
Boy, probably 03 or so.
03. Okay. So that's the Transworld thing. Okay, but you had Moto Drive on the side too? Was that kind of how it was? Okay. Because I remember Moto Drive, and I remember when Moto News had their board. I remember those boards, but then you're gonna have to walk me through what happened with all that. Because all of a sudden I remember it all changed, like everything changed. But take me through that period.
Yeah, it was kind of board politics, and I think Moto News started charging money for theirs, and mine, the Moto Drive site, really was kind of just sitting there almost doing nothing. If I don't think anyone was posting in it, and then one board got shut down or something like that, and I don't even remember the details of it, but Dave Kimmy from Engine Ice, in that whatever old forum we were in, said, "Hey, Guyby's place is empty. Let's go over there and mess it up." So it was kind of funny, and then it kind of started a migration over there, and it was crazy to see. I'm equally parts horrified and happy, at that point that people are coming over to check it out.
So it went from like, and all of a sudden you're like, whoa, what's going on here? There's a lot going on.
Now I'm steering this crazy ship that, back then people think sometimes that the Vital MX forums are rough and tough, and man, it's fairly mild compared to
Wild West of Moto Drive.
Yeah, it was definitely Wild West back then.
What was that like for you? Because it sounds like Moto Drive went from like a paddle boat to a speed boat pretty quick, and you're like, again, you're having to steer this thing all of a sudden. What was that like as far as like a responsibility side? Because again, if it's not doing much, you don't have to do much. But if it starts doing a lot, now you got to be way more involved. How was that transition, having to watch this thing like boom real quick?
Yeah, it was funny because all of a sudden I'm having to try and make some rules and try and steer the ship, and most of the time I just call it wearing janitor's overalls, because you're in there cleaning up messes or trying to separate warring parties or whatever. It was equally parts educational, and it's fun, it's scary, it's I used to really take a long time to decide, hey, does this person get clicked, or do they do they live to see another day, or are they
are they going to be a serial offender here, or is this just someone's having a bad day?
and I used to I really used to fuss over it now, and now it's pretty easy to tell who the bad actors are, and make a quick decision on.
The patterns are exposed pretty quickly, I think, nowadays. You can kind of tell who's a troublemaker.
Yeah, and social media has changed so much. It's funny, people, back then it seemed like it was more about the passion of the sport, and it all bonded us together and like that, and now it's like everybody's just looking for attention, and to throw their 2 cents in. Sometimes it's not quite as friendly.
It's definitely changed, and it's still changing. It seems like the whole landscape's still kind of figuring itself out. Okay, so just out of curiosity, again, while you have Moto Drive going, what's Transworld's thoughts of that? Is there any kind of conflict there? Is there any kind of thought of wanting to merge in any way? I mean, how was Transworld during that period?
They had their own forums, and to be honest, it was terrible. You know, it was kind of like an ignored section of the site, and you know, we didn't really do much with it. And
so it wasn't like a conflict because it wasn't doing enough. It wasn't doing anything.
In some ways, this was all Moto Drive was almost their de facto, you know, board on the side that actually functioned and actually was worth looking at versus what Transworld had on its own. So we just
it was fine. It was no big.
Yeah, it didn't bug them. You know,
more of a branch anyway because it was
more pre-existing. Yeah,
makes sense. Okay, so how does it get to Vital? How does the Vital? Because I don't even really remember Vital being Vital until I think the message board moved over. I kind of don't remember it even before. Was it going? I mean, this is bad on my part, but I don't remember anything before the board ended up over there.
It was there, and I don't know that it was sort of like, hey, I'm over here now. And then my boss, Brad McDonald, actually he decided, hey, you know, I'm just going to buy this. Let's integrate the whole thing. You know, it's kind of like a pre-existing database of users and everything else, and just migrate everyone over. So it kind of worked out well in that way.
But how did that affect the Transworld thing? Like, you got your thing, the Transworld, right. Like bunch of roads here that are all kind of swerving into each other.
Now I need to kind of lay out how Vital came to be.
Yep.
My boss now, Brad McDonald, used to be the group publisher at Transworld. He had started out on the BMX side as well. He started Ride BMX and Snap BMX magazines, sold those to Time Warner, and he stayed on as the publisher for both of those. Then later on, he sold those to Time Warner. He became the group publisher for all the Transworld titles. So it was surf, snow, skate, BMX, moto, everything. They had a quad magazine that they started, you know, that went well for a while. But you know, kind of late in my time at Transworld, he called a all hands on deck company meeting down in Carlsbad, and so all the staffs from all the different magazines were there, and you could have run the same script for almost every title in the line. You know, it'd be like, hey, Transworld Surf, subscriptions are down, newsstands down, circulation's down, tough ad market, ads are, you know, a little rough, but the website's up by triple digits. You know, and take that same script and just drop it into every title in the line over there, and you know, you could almost see the light bulb pop on over his head, like Prince dying. You know, at least in the way that it used to be. Now, you know,
as the dominant force of information, it was becoming more of like, I want these magazines, I want this stuff, but I'm actually going on the internet to get my quick, like, I guess, a quick fix of information.
It got to, you know, obviously you weren't going to magazines for your race reports and breaking news and things like that. It, you know, by the time a magazine would come out, it was like a history lesson on what happened for a particular race. But maybe 3 months after that meeting, he was out of he left Transworld. Maybe 3 months after that, I get a call from him. Hey, what are you doing? You know, we're starting this new thing. Are you interested? Yeah, you know, I'm always willing to talk. So
it
was, you know, I think we had a Starbucks meeting, and you know, at the time I think I asked him, hey, do you have a 3-year plan? You know, not thinking that I'm going to end up being there for 15.
Going back, I was like, do you have a 15-year plan for me?
Right. And it's funny because, I mean, most any job that I'd had in the past, 6 years, 6 years was pretty good. You know, I had figured it out, had kind of mastered whatever I was doing there and gotten bored of it. So to stay 15 years where I was at, I was pretty stoked on that. That's a good long run.
That is wild. So I take it the Starbucks meeting goes well. You take a somewhat of a leap of faith because again, the trans world thing seems pretty established. It seems pretty secure, but this is a new venture. So is there a little like, I mean, it seems like a little adventure you're about to go on, but were you confident that this was all going to work, or were you just feeling a change, just wanted to swing for it?
Maybe a little of both. It's something where, hey, you can create what you want from the scratch. And I mean, for years I don't want to say very little oversight, because Brad always pushed us to do better. Hey, how can we make this better? What can we improve? How do we have better headlines? Things like that. There was always the nudge to move the ball forward. But on the other hand, I had a boatload of freedom to do pretty much whatever I want or wanted to. And that's kind of, and my dream, it definitely a little further back, it became, hey, how do I get to go to all the races, and how do I cover this stuff? And
right,
I got to live that dream for a long time. So it was pretty cool.
Yeah. So, and I'm thinking to myself now, though, the responsibilities have to be going up, because if you're going to do the merger, Vital's going to get the board's going to become bigger, which it's gotten. I mean, the board's crazy. But then you have the other side of the job, which is the journalism, the photography. Back then, and I'll ask you a back then question and a now question. What was that responsibility load like for you as far as where your attention was on the day to day?
I kind of always had to pay a little bit of attention to what was happening on the board and just not let it get completely out of control. But I tried to let people have a little free reign, but not too much. So there was kind of fairly constant steering on that. For a long time, the race stuff, it was actually pretty automatic and easy. And that's where now, I used to be able to shoot photos all day, work on photos all night, which is a pretty much standard deal for any of the guys that are out there covering the races on a regular basis. I call it the day shift, which is the racing part, and then the night shift, which is everything after. And typically you're trying to get as much stuff done as you can before, you go grab the first plane out of town in the morning. And so it's pretty much an all-nighter afterwards. And for years I could pull that off. And then, in the last couple of years, it's like, hey, that crushes me for about 3 days now. That's, I think part of what determined it was time. It's time.
So
to
need a little
off.
gap between the day shift and the night shift, because it's like merging into one, and then you have 3 days of no shift.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we kind of joked before we hit the go button on here that, it's job style. It's part job, it's part lifestyle. With the forum, it never really shut off. I mean, it was hard to completely shut off. Days off, and not it. That would be kind of a rare thing, So
yeah, it kind of, because it never stops. It's
right.
not like a race happens, you do the report, and then you can move on to the next thing. It's kind of like it's just a never-ending thing. So you're kind of always got one eye on it at all times.
Oh yeah. So to step away from it, like week-long vacation, well, that's crazy,
Well, yeah, because you have to shut your brain all the way off, because again, you're used to years of just keeping an eye open over there. So
yeah, I mean, at Transworld, I ended up having to try and get some time off there. I ended up writing a whole manual on how to operate the website while I was gone. None of the other guys there knew how to do it, and the support I got from down south, Oceanside is where the main office was, and that's where the head of Transworld's internet stuff was down there. Early on, and when I worked there, it was, hey, can I come down and get some lessons on how to do this? And the response I got back was, figure it out. Okay, thanks. So to take time off, and I ended up writing a manual so that everybody else at the office could post stories and pictures. That's
very nice of you. That's very nice of you. But it also tells me that there was maybe too much reliance on one person.
Yeah.
Where, again, that's pressure on your plate, because now you're responsible for it. You can't even go away, which I know that can get frustrating.
Right.
So how about Vital's just growth through the years, and just the growth of all social media? Because Vital now, I mean, now you're not managing just a website and a board, and now there's the Instagram, there's the Facebook. It's like all these avenues of information kept growing and growing and growing, which means it's just more on your plate, more that you have to
Right.
keep after. What was that like watching that happen? Again, exciting, scary, a little bit of everything.
Yeah, I used to call it the treadmill getting faster. And it does, and you just kind of deal with it. Over the years, I did get some help from different people. We had Bio working there for a while. Michael came in for a bit, and it was kind of funny because there was a point where I could tell, he's getting kind of antsy, and that, hey, he'd kind of like to be doing what I'm doing, and rather than the products and things that he was working on. And I kind of sat him down one day and told him, hey, give this a couple years and I'll probably be out of here, and we can kind of hand over at that point.
You're like,
And
hey, calm down. I'll hand off the ball eventually, but it's not your turn to run, buddy. Just
right,
chill out.
right. And he thought it was going to be a few years longer than I was describing. So that's where he left and was doing his own YouTube stuff for a while. Started the race team. Kind of stepped up his game outside of Vital. Ended up leaving. But Sean Klinger, Brad Resnick, working on all the videos, and the staff has grown over the years. So trying to keep an eye on what they're doing, plus the stuff that I was doing. It got to be kind of a pretty heavy load. So
for sure, I do want to.
That's just normal stuff.
I want to come back to kind of this new chapter we're about to start. Well, this chapter that you're ending and starting, but I do got some questions just generally over the years. Is there any race that stands out to you that I guess would just be just a standout, something from your side, something that you did individually, or something that happened that you saw or a part of? Because we've gone through all these different little mini generations, the Carmichael Stewart years, and the Ryans, and now this current one. What do you think about those generations? Is there anything that stands out in those that you can really remember as like, wow, that was a standout night?
Yeah. One thing I would say is I love going to the races, right? Or loved. I loved going right now is awesome because you have no idea who's going to win. There were sections of the, like the Ryans era where you knew what the podium was, maybe with just some slight variations before you left on the plane to go to the race. So while watching those two battle was awesome, it was also really predictable. And I love the unpredictability of what's happening right now. Awesome events. Some of the stuff at Daytona, where you would just get those massive swampy, rain out, watching Chad, 2 laps or 2 corners from the finish, and it's shooting stuff out the exhaust, and watch him sit there and kick and kick and kick, and then Wyndham go by and do this massive double take. That was stuff like that leaves an impression. The night in Jacksonville with Chad and James, where Chad grabbed him by the back of the neck, and
09.
It was that stuff was fun, and it was pretty fun at the time because I would kind of go to each of their individual trucks after the race and talk to them, and it was almost like they were talking to each other a little bit through what I was recording.
That's rad. And you're like, so you're just the messenger.
Yeah.
You're like, what do you want me to tell him? What do you want me to tell him? That's cool.
Yeah. So, but I, just in what they were saying, they were kind of like, hey, he did this, and this is why I don't like it. They would kind of just work through it a little bit like that. Ricky's last race, that was awesome. That whole night, and then kind of seeing that pass with James and Ricky going back and forth in that race, it almost felt to me like a little bit of a handoff, at the time. James kind of was the next generation,
Yep. I thought Ricky handled that pretty well too. Because they obviously had a little heated, it didn't go long enough to get too heated, but there was a little heated rivalry there. And for him to like pass the respect on, I felt like that was I'm a big Ricky fan. So I felt like that was a respectful way to pass the baton and be like, all right, it's your turn now. And Still watching that race. You're just like, it doesn't get much better than that. That's about as
Right.
good as it goes. Not just because the racing was good, but the story of who they were and what they were doing at that time. I'm with you. There's certain ones that stand out, and whenever I see flashbacks of that, I'm like, that was a bigger moment, I think, than we all realized.
Mm-hmm. And you get some of the stuff where it's like a little bit controversial with, say, Kennard and Villapoto going for the championship, and oh, Kennard put him into the pole at the finish line. No, his back end stepped out, and
yeah,
I don't know too many guys that are going to use the back end to try and move somebody over. It was just
Trey's good, but he's not that good.
Well, maybe he is that good, but
yeah, Ori is the best ever.
Yeah, right. But watching people lose their minds over that stuff, and in some ways, I look back at the old days racing where it was banging bars, and Hannah saying, "Oh, I'm going to take his knees out," and whatever. And then, like, now you get two guys touching a corner, and the internet loses its mind.
Or one roost the other one on a fast lap, and it's like,
yeah. Oh, controversy. It's pretty funny.
I know that it is crazy. When you look back in time, though, you have all those moments that were like the heated moments. And I guess I would say, at least in my recent memory, is the Ferrandis Craig one. That one's a big standout, because I remember being on the podium and hearing the crowd. I had to take my earpiece out. I was like, oh my God, it was loud.
It was vicious. Yeah.
I thought the whole stadium was going to collapse. And I mean, What was that one like for you? Because you've seen all these dramatic moments that had impacted the crowd, but I feel like that one couldn't have been set up any worse for Dylan, as the foreign rider hitting the SoCal guy that everyone loves. Christian's the dad. And when that happened, I was just like, I feel bad, because I don't think he meant to hit him that hard, but I think this is going to be pretty bad for the guy tonight. And it was violently loud.
Yeah. And then some of the heat that he took on social media afterwards, or, threats directed at him or his wife. And, he's got extra security the next weekend. And that's over the top,
But those things, okay, but those heated moments, they do end up online, and they do end up on the board, because the board is where, I mean, it's YouTube has a comment section, Racer, they all have their comment sections, but I feel like the dramatic moments go to the board. And I mean, what was the 72 hours after that one like on Vital? I mean, it had to have been one of the more wild times.
Yeah, it's funny, because when you say 72 hours, that's what I usually look at as the lifespan of like any huge topic, is give it 3 days and it'll calm down. But just trying to keep it civil. Dylan didn't come here from France to be the villain. He just wants to race and try and win championships and like that. And those guys were going for it.
Yeah.
Was it aggressive? Yeah, for sure.
It was.
Yeah. But did it end up like he thought it was going to end up? I don't think so. So
I think he would have rather had it go a different way.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. So, but the way that berm ended, where it was kind of cut off at the end, that didn't help Christian at all either. There were about 3 factors going on there that all seemed to collide at that one point, right around Dylan's front tire. So
wild. That one. Yeah. I won't forget that one. I've never felt a stadium like I did that night. So this year, and I won't get into details, and I doubt you will either, but there are some podium discussions between riders that are unhappy, and maybe the teams, maybe spouses, whatever. Is there any that stand out in your time where you're like, wow, this is kind of a little hot down here on the podium with, again, sometimes it's a rider. Like, I mean, for me, I always remember Villeman and Roncada going at it, the old video. But I'm talking like where the families are involved, the spouses and the teams. And there was a couple of those this year that I won't mention in detail, but did any stand out from you just in your career where you're like, it is fun being down here on the podium because it is hot down here?
Yeah, it's just interesting watching the dynamics with, like you said, families. You've got the goggle people, you've got the gear people, you've got the team PR people, and everybody's kind of stink eyeing each other sometimes. It's pretty funny to watch. And usually it's like really hot about right the time they get off the track, and then it kind of rapidly cools and they put their professional face back on. You know,
it's like the window is small to be really angry, because then you kind of have to shut it off, and then by the time you're done, like the podium interviews, it's hard to like get all mad again. So you get like a window where it's like real good down there.
But it's the other thing that's funny is watching, you know, when they're doing TV interviews, the guy that's on the camera, he's got his face going on, but then you get the other guys off the side. Are they listening to what the person being interviewed is saying, or are they playing the race through in their mind? And just watching them play the stuff over in their heads while they're on the podium is pretty interesting also.
Hey, I like on the podium sometimes. Tell your dog I said hi.
Yeah, Arlo.
I have earbuds in, otherwise mine would hear it and he'd start barking back. They'd be doing an interview. So I like when I'm on the podium, sometimes the rider will come up and they're watching the screen as we're doing like the replay of the moment of the race. And like, I'll kind of watch them sometimes, and I can see like if they're the moment of the race in a bad way, like they got passed or something, you can see their face just like you can really see their expression.
Frustration. Mm-hmm.
Or if they're the moment, I think Nichols this year at one time was the moment of the race. He made a good move, something, and I'm kind of watching him, and his face was just like,
oh yeah,
cause he knew what he did, but he didn't see what he did. And when he sees it back, and he's kind of got 15 seconds, I'm like, hey, 15 seconds. I'm waiting for the booth to get done, and I can see them watching, and they're loving that. Like sometimes, and sometimes they're just when they're the moment of the race in the negative, dude, their faces are not good.
Yeah, that's for sure. And the what I wish we could get the camera and mic on is the little conversations you have with the riders before you start the interviews, because
those are private. Those are private.
I know, and I totally understand it, but I'm guessing some good information gets passed along in those moments.
That's for me, because I've built a good relationship with the riders. I maybe even have told you this at some point, but and I'll let the cat out of the bag because I don't care. It's fine. I talk to the riders before the interview and usually give them a little idea of where I'm coming. And the reason why, as my TV coach said, you're not like the TMZ media where you're trying to catch them in a moment. I'm trying to get the best answer I can. And sometimes these riders, their emotions, they're a little scattered. So I like to make sure that they have an idea of where I'm going so that they can give a good answer. That actually makes me look better as an interviewer. Right. And so I know that's like, it feels like it's cheating a little bit, but I want them to really give the best answer. And if I catch them off guard, I feel like they just ignore my question and move to the talking point. So,
or the sponsor list.
So we have so we have those combos, and, you know, and some of them aren't detailed. Some are where I'm almost feeling them out. Like Hunter Lawrence, man, how's that feel? That felt good. I get a little vibe on what he's feeling, so I can steer my question that way. But we have some unique conversations up there sometimes. Sometimes they're not so nice.
Right. It gives them a chance to think about their answer instead of, 10 seconds of mulling it over in their head before they get an answer. So yeah, preparing them a little bit, it definitely helps them out. But there's a lot of adrenaline going on up there too. And man, I wouldn't want to be put in their spot sometime where, you just come off the track, you're either mad, happy, whatever, and somebody sticks a mic in your face. You barely caught your breath, and you need to talk about what happened. So I don't envy those guys on that.
Let's share that feeling then, because I want to know if you've ever had one of those where you had to do the interview and you felt maybe a little uncomfortable because of the moment. For me, it was Cincerello when he lost that championship. Bondo's in my ear and he's like, Daniel, go to the truck. And I'm like, I don't want to. He's like, go. I'm like, no, I don't want to. And I went over there and I had to interview him. And for me, that was the most uncomfortable moment I've ever had doing what I do, because I was hurt for the guy. And not that guy had skin in the game, but
we all were.
I felt, who wouldn't be hurt for Adam? And that was my hardest. What about you? Is there one where you're like, I'm getting this interview and gosh, this guy, I know he probably doesn't feel great about this, but I need to do my job. I got to get some info. Any stand out?
I can't think of any in particular, but it's so much easier to talk to people about their successes than their failures. And it is tough, and you feel for them. You don't want to, it's almost like you don't want to give them the opportunity to to say something bad, that they might regret later.
Yeah, you're like, please don't say something bad that you're going to be mad at me for asking a simple question.
And thinking of the forum guys right now, they're going, yeah, well, you're supposed to do that, and you're supposed to make them uncomfortable and put them on the spot and grill them for, the info. Yeah, but within reason,
Yep.
They send or seem to think that, hey, we're going to get blackballed, and you won't be able to go to the truck and talk to these guys and whatever. We can always go to the truck and talk to the guys.
Yeah.
It's not like there's such a line in the sand like that. And generally they pretty quickly forget and move on to the next week, so.
We got that window after the race, hot emotions, and then probably a 3-day span of moderate emotions, and then by Wednesday, Thursday, we're prepping for the next one. So are they.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So take me through this, I guess, this last year then, because you said you're kind of having these feelings, you're a little burnout, I got to imagine the rental car line and the airports, and it's been tough the last year and a half anyway with travel. Do you think that's had any effect on this? Is just travel becoming more difficult generally?
Yeah, for sure. And, just having to wear masks, and, I'm not going to step one side of the line or the other on that stuff, because it doesn't matter. People don't really care what I think or need to know, I don't think. But, just when you're hustling from one spot to another, and you're trying to do your job, and you've got the mask on, it makes it harder. There's no doubt about that. Working up a sweat and just clammy with me, wearing glasses. I don't always wear them, but if I pull them down,
you got some fog going on probably too.
I'm trying to post them. Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to post some social media. I can't even see what I'm trying to post, so stuff like that. I think that, it was a necessary thing to do some of those 3 days or 3 race mini residencies. But it was like, man, about the time that I would get done with one race, boom, it's time to, go do the next one. And those kind of wore on me a little bit, I think. 10 days in a hotel is just never fun anyway.
It always sounds fun until you're about 4 days in and you're like,
yeah. There was there was the second race in Atlanta. After that race, I shut down. I got back to the hotel room about 1 a.m. after, all the Zoom calls afterwards, and everything else that happens after the race. I think I slept till like 4 o'clock the next afternoon, got up for a couple hours, went and had something to eat for dinner, went back to sleep and slept till like 8 o'clock the next morning. It was like a crazy amount of sleep in a short amount of time. And that was, it was also a pretty hot race on that Tuesday. So I think maybe that was a little bit of it, but I was like, damn, that just crushed me. So I don't know what was going on then, or who knows, but it just wore me out. So
yeah, those could be. I always felt like the first 2 were like boom, boom. And then the third one was like this, because it had that extra day. It had a weird gap to where you felt like you were rushed, but you kind of weren't, but you kind of were, you know what I mean? I always felt like that Wednesday, Thursday were weird on those a little bit. And then by Friday, we were like back in the zone, right? But I always felt the Wednesday, Thursdays were awkward, Honestly,
it was a little bit of stress, just trying to stay, make sure you stayed negative on the tests that we were doing too. It's like, hey, that Thursday test before, or Thursday or Friday test before the last race, man, I hope I didn't pick up something during the week there. And it would have been tough where I'm doing all the coverage, and then oops, now we need to get somebody in here in a hurry and try and figure it out. So you were trying to be semi-cautious on being around people or like that. And it's funny, away from the races it was a little more relaxed, but there was contact tracing going on and everything else. So you're trying to play the game correctly.
Interesting chapter for everybody. Obviously the riders, that was weird for them. For media and journalism, I think we all went through it. We're like, okay, we got through that. We're happy that it's getting back to normal, but we all had our own kind of a take on that chapter. The Salt Lake one, the long month there, that one was different. So definitely
Yeah,
will
that,
look back 5 to 10 years and be like, remember that
oh
chapter
yeah.
where we had to do some moves to make this thing happen.
Yeah, and rather than doing 3 weeks in a hotel there, I had my travel trailer, and I just lived up there in that thing for the whole time. So,
Like a
um,
like a camping vacation kind of.
yeah, kind of. I mean,
But of
in some,
course, working again, one eye always on the board.
yeah, but I will say that was some of the best mountain biking that I got to do was up in that area. So,
Yep.
a lot of fun.
So 2 questions for you, one on the Vital side and then one on you. So how's Vital going to survive? I mean, what's the plan here? What's the survival plan for Vital next now that you're gone?
Michael Lindsay will handle things well. I'd love to say that, hey, without me, they're going to be in complete shambles. No, it's going to continue on. And it'll carry on like normal. So I don't even sweat that a little bit. Will it be different? Sure, but he'll put his own spin and flavor on it, and they'll carry on just like normal. So who knows? Maybe it's better.
Nah, we'll just say no. We'll say no to that.
Okay.
Sorry, Michael. Last question is for you. What do you want to do? Again, you're in this transition period, but if you were to look ahead and say, again, maybe it's not 15 years this time, maybe we're back at the 6-7 range where you said you were before, but what are the next chapter or two look like for you as far as what would you like them to be?
Who knows? Maybe working on some social media stuff. I still enjoy travel. That part doesn't bug me at all. It's funny because I have had a company or two reach out and say, what would you like to do? Yeah, I guess I need to remanufacture myself, or really make some decisions in that. And it's kind of nice right now where Brad kind of gave me a long runway here at the end. Over the next couple months, I'm working on just archiving all my old photos, and leaving them with a library of stuff that they can work with for the future. So I don't have to make a decision real quick, but it helps. It definitely helps, and I appreciate it that it gave me that kind of runway to figure it out as I go along. So
I'll sneak in one last one. Am I going to see it at Anaheim?
yeah, it would kill me to.
I mean, yeah, right.
Yeah,
I was going to say,
yeah.
that's a silly question. There's no way you're not going to go to Anaheim.
Yeah, but it's gonna be so weird.
Well, okay, here, harder question.
For me, sitting in a seat with no camera in my hand, that's weird. And I don't know how I operate as a spectator. I'm used to, hey, I would want to be over here shooting this angle and trying to capture this, and it's gonna be odd. It's gonna be really
odd. It's gonna be odd. Well, I can't wait to talk to you afterwards and find out how it went. I would guess some positives and some negative emotions juggle. I would say you're probably gonna be like, but also like, I like this a little bit, but I feel like it'll go both ways a little bit.
Even going through the last batch of races that I did, I after the first race of the summer season, I knew what was going to happen. I sent Brad an email and said, hey, I love what I'm doing. It's time for a change, but I'm good through the end of the season. So I kind of knew it all the way through the season, and started letting people know a little bit. And what I had told Brad was, mid-season, we can broadcast it more widely and let people know. And that's where we advertised for a spot. But I think Michael had kind of an in already. So
yeah, seems like a good fit. I mean, I feel like that was an easy fit.
But going through like I did, knowing that there's a finish line at the end of the Supercross season, I was maybe mulling it over a little bit, but hadn't really made any decision yet. So, when I left Salt Lake City, I'm like, was that just my last race? I said, yeah, I don't know. So,
wow. You never know. The future, everyone's future is wet cement. So you never know what's going to happen. You never know how you might feel at the first one. But
right.
Guy B, thanks again. Man, I've known you for years, and it's going to be weird not seeing you down there. But
I know.
Maybe I'll come find you in the stands, or maybe you'll be in the pits and you won't be in the stands. I'll probably see you in the pits.
Archiving those photos, I'm going to be looking for the black over the boot pants and the studded belt buckle. Or the
It
belt
does
just got
not
a belt?
exist. It does not. The belt exists.
Mm.
The belt exists. The pants never went over the boot. I promise you, that was special made stuff to go in the boot. But if you find that stuff, please send me some, because I don't really have that many photos from that period. I have
Mhm.
2 probably in my phone. So if you get some of the old 04 LBZ days, just send them my way. I'd appreciate it.
Will do.
Awesome. Well, Guy B, thanks for joining me on Beyond the Track, and I will see you in a couple months.
Thanks, guys.